Chapter 11 is called Information Literacy, Workforce 2020, and the e-Portfolio. First off, let's talk about plagiarism. You've heard about plagiarism since, the first time you probably have written something or used the internet for information. Plagiarism occurs when you use the work of somebody else and you don't give them credit for it, right? So it's taking somebody else's ideas without citing where you got it. It's illegal, it's a felony, and if you plagiarize at a university, college, or junior college, community college, you will be expelled, and that information of your cheating will be put on your academic transcript, which will cause other colleges not to want to accept you because they don't want people who they believe are cheaters on their campus. So the way you get around plagiarism is you properly cite the work. So if you take a quote or a saying that somebody else said, you just give the person credit for it. You can use bibliography.com, easybib.com. You could use Purdue OWL. There are so many online resources that will tell you how to properly cite information. Having good information literacy is to know how to use and access the information that's in front of you. Doesn't matter what it is, if it's information from a book, if it's information from the internet, if it's information from your class syllabus. You have to know how to use the information to your advantage. This is one of the most marketable skills you need to have as a 21st century learner. For example, Google is able to provide you with a lot of information, but you still have to be able to question it and make sure the information you find is accurate and not made up. The best place for you to find legitimate, authentic work is the library, because the library has a repository of information from scholarly sources that you can use for research, or if you want to find the truth about something. There are lots of different databases and things like that. Annotations are important whenever you are looking at reading or looking at whether or not work is authentic. I just make it a habit whenever I'm reading something, I automatically take out my pen or pencil, and as I'm reading, I'm underlining, I'm highlighting, I'm putting notes in the margin. An annotation is a note, a brief note in the margin. It could be a summary, it could be a statement, it could be I don't really agree with that. It could be questions, it could be anything you think about as you're reading. The trap method is one way to make annotations. The components of the trap method include timeliness, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. And we'll talk about what those things mean in just a little bit more detail. So this is one way, if you're not a person who normally does a good job with making annotations, this is one thing that you can do to make sure that you are taking good annotations. Timeliness refers to how timely is the article or the book or whatever it is that you're reading. Is it current? And when you're looking at information, you always want to find something that has occurred within the last 10 years for it to be still relevant and timely. If you're researching something that's over the latest technology or the latest educational strategies, if it's the latest of something, then you probably want to look for something no less than 6 months or to a year in order for it to, because, time, technology, things change quickly. Relevance refers to whether or not the resource helps you answer the question you are trying to answer. Like, is it relevant to what you need to do? Does it matter for your research? When I was writing my dissertation for my doctorate, I probably read through 100 different articles, and they were all similar to my topic, but some of them weren't relevant. So out of the 100, I probably only used like 60, but I had to read through more to figure out which ones were applicable to my research question. Authority has to do with whether or not the author or the person who's sponsoring the organization is credible about the subject they're talking about. So you always want to look at, well, who's saying this? Like, who is the person who's written this? What website is it on? Can this person actually say this? Like, do they have the credentials to say what they're saying? If I'm looking for medical information, I probably want to be on a medical website. I don't want to be on a website about food. Accuracy refers to whether or not the information from the source is correct. Is it accurate, or could it have some bias, like emotional bias? And one way you can tell whether or not a source is accurate is by looking at the source and looking at, okay, whether or not that person is saying something that would make them biased. Like, you want facts, you don't want opinions when talking about accuracy. And lastly, we have purpose. So you should always know the author's purpose for writing something. Every time an author writes something, there's always a purpose. There has to be a reason it was created. If you can discover that, that can help you validate whether or not the source is accurate. Now let's talk about the e-portfolio. An e-portfolio is an electronic repository of information that can be used to share who you are with others. People nowadays use portfolios to apply for colleges, to get a certain job, and it is a way for others to know who they are. This is no longer are people going to job interviews and taking a paper copy of a resume. They're more than likely sharing a link and saying, here's my website, here's information about me. A portfolio worker is someone who moves from one company to another in order to build up their e-portfolio. So they might work for a job for 1 year, move to another job the next year, move to another job the year after that, because they want to make themselves look good and look like a good candidate for a job. And that's everything you need to know about Chapter 11.